The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
17 years ago, my friend Yummy Schachter was in Israel together with his father, Rav Herschel Schachter, Rosh Yeshiva at Yeshiva University, one of the most prominent rabbis of our generation. They were taking a taxi to their hotel in Jerusalem one night before their flight was going to leave back to the States. Yummy is not sure why they used a random taxi that night, because they had a specific driver they've used for 20 years. But, so he told me, they used a random taxi driver that night to get back to the hotel. And, so goes it, they left their suitcase in the trunk of this taxi. As they were going upstairs in the hotel, they realized that they don't have that suitcase, and Yummy commented to his father, "It's Israel. I'm sure that bag is going to show up." 2 hours later, Yummy gets a call from his brother-in-law, who was serving in reserve duty in Miluim in the Israeli army. And his brother-in-law says, "Yummy, did you leave a suitcase in the back of a taxi in Jerusalem?" And Yummy says, "Yes, I did." "How do you know?" He says, "Well, somebody in my unit just got a call from his family member. His family member is a taxi driver in Jerusalem. He was explaining to me the following story. Is that the taxi driver was driving a passenger from Jerusalem to Ben Gurion Airport. And this American passenger, when they opened up the trunk to put his bag inside, he realized there was another suitcase in there. And as they looked at the name tag on the suitcase, they realized it belonged to Rav Herschel Schachter. The new American passenger was blown away. "This belongs to Rav Herschel Schachter!" And the taxi driver says, "Who's that?" So this is like the Baba Sali of American Ashkenazim. So, after he dropped off this passenger at Ben Gurion Airport, this taxi driver called his family member in the army and asked him how he can find this American rabbi. This family member of the taxi driver called Yummy, who was his brother-in-law, to let him know what had just happened. So, the taxi driver gets the address of where they're staying, comes back to the hotel about an hour later to drop off the suitcase. Had the story ended there, the amount of divine providence that just took place would be amazing. But the story just gets better. Rav Herschel Schachter gives his son Yummy $100 as a token of appreciation to give to the taxi driver as he arrives. Yummy takes the money, goes downstairs, and as the taxi pulls up, he says, "Thank you so much for our suitcase. Thank you so much for bringing it back. Here's $100. The driver says, "I don't want your money. I just want 1 minute with the rabbi." Yummy says, "Okay." Calls his father, and his father comes downstairs to meet the taxi driver. The taxi driver begins crying, tears streaming down his face. And he says, "Rabbi, my wife and I have been married for 14 years, yet we have not yet been blessed with a child. Can you please give us a blessing for a child?" Yummy watches and told me that his father stood there holding the taxi driver's hands, crying along with him, thinking, and then responding, "You're going to be blessed with a child within the next year." They quietly walk back into the hotel, and Yummy's upset. How can you say that to him? How can you tell him that he's going to have a child? You have no idea. He's been married for 14 years and no child yet. How can you possibly tell him that God is going to give him a child? And his father calmly responds, "Yummy, we're going to pray for him." End of conversation. About a year later, Yummy and his father are celebrating Simchat Torah, a Jewish holiday, at Ner Yisrael in Baltimore. During the dancing circles with the Torah, Yummy notices that a young man, a family friend, was trying to get the attention of his father, Rav Herschel Schachter. He kept on walking over to him and then walking away. Walking over and walking away. Yummy approaches this young man and says, "Are you trying to speak to my father?" And the young man says, "Yes." He says, "Is there a message I could pass along?" And the young man says, "Yes. I had just been in Israel on a trip. And my taxi driver in Jerusalem, realizing that I was speaking English, asked me if I know Rav Herschel Schachter from America. And I said yes. This driver got emotional and asked me for a favor. Can you please let the rabbi know that my wife and I just had a baby boy?" Yummy was shocked. And he went over to his father, told him the story, and asked him, "Did you pray for him?" Do you remember him? A year later, did you pray for him? And his father, with tears in his eyes, responds to Yummy, yes. Every day, 3 times a day. Prayer, we know, is so powerful. Prayers for others are even more powerful. Because when we treat each other like brothers and sisters, when we unite together as a family unit, then God really comes in as our Father. Let us please take this message of prayer for others and really incorporate it into our lives. Make that a reality. To think about others, those that we know and those that we don't know, and what they need. And make it part of our daily routine to truly pray for them.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org